to, as I was saying earlier, want to talk about what is holism, and talk a little bit about what holism is and why it's so important to us here at Mish. It's really core in our philosophy, and it's because holism gives us a bigger picture. What's interesting about holism is Jan Christian Smuts, who coined the word, had this was in 1926. The theory of relativity had been published just a number of years earlier, and the theory of evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, was still pretty new material as well. People hadn't completely digested either of those theories, and not as if they've completely digested them now either. But if you can imagine how new and challenging they were at the turn of the century when Jan Christian Smuts read them. But when he read those two theories, he realized that there was a new understanding that was coming through humanity, and a much bigger picture that brings energy, light, and matter into one unit, where that's the theory of relativity, whereas we thought that energy was one thing, light was another thing, and matter is a totally different thing. Einstein said, no, these three things are totally interconnected, totally intertwined, and they're in a dynamic dance with each other. So matter is, in essence, energy and light. And light actually has weight and is the basis of matter. And so these three are three dimensions of reality. So with that understanding, he said, well, that means that, matter isn't what we thought it was, but that also means that life isn't what we thought it was. And the theory of evolution, of course, brought in the idea that, no, we weren't all just, created at the same time, at the same moment, but that there was an evolution of wholes. And this is an important observation that he made. He said evolution doesn't happen in halves. The bird doesn't get half a wing, and then develop one wing, and then the evolution happens with new wholes that come into being with their characteristics. That's in evolution in life, and even evolution in material evolution. So the idea of evolution and life and matter and the universe and the cosmos being, again, a dynamic interchange, and evolution to greater wholes, all the time more complex wholes. Each organism through evolution becomes more and more complex with more and more dimensions. Human beings have a couple more dimensions than animals. Now, whether we use those dimensions to good purposes or not is another question of debate. But we do have a couple more angles than animals do, and animals have, of course, more dimensions than plants do, and plants have many more dimensions than rocks and material things. So the dimensionality, the complexity that happens in evolution is an important consideration. And so that's what he wrote his book about. He said, holism then is the understanding that there is a wholeness in creation, a wholeness of the cosmos, a wholeness of life, and that everything is a whole within a greater whole. And every whole reflects the greater whole in some way. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is that it's not the first time that we understand that, but for the West, it was something sort of unique in understanding. But of course, in the East and in history, there's been many times that we see proof that the ancients understood the nature of our wholeness and our interconnectedness with nature and with the cosmos. And so I want to show you a couple of examples of that so that we can sort of base our conversation and our dialogue from those examples, and we can go from there. So the important thing to understand about matter after the theory of relativity and quantum physics is that matter is nothing more than energy in vibration. Okay, I'm going to use the word waveforms to mean that. It's energy vibrating at a very, very fast rate. And that's what gives us the experience of the material world. A way to understand that is if you, but you know, the essence of the material world still is that it is mostly space. You know, this is what we have to understand. But our experience of it is as if it's dense and hard and there is no space. So why is that? Well, if you can imagine an airplane propeller just has the two parts and then empty space all around. But if that airplane propeller is spinning very quickly, okay, well, you wouldn't trust to put your finger in any one of the empty spaces, would you? And if it were smaller than you are and spinning very, very quickly, you would experience it as something hard. No matter where you put your finger or no matter how you touched it, it would feel hard. So that's what, when we feel the table or we feel our skin, it feels hard to us. That's the electrostatic forces. That sense of hardness is because the energy that is vibrating to create the sense of matter is vibrating very, very, very quickly. And so there's no, the empty space that really is there that we don't get to feel because it's vibrating and filling it as we feel it. Okay. So that's physics. That's what we know today to be the true nature of reality. But it's not the first time, like I say, that we know that. Now, if we are to take this understanding of the material world even and look at the human being, then let's take a look at what the human being would look like. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys to show you a little film. That sort of illustrates that what we see as our visible bodies is really only a minute fraction of reality. The ancients had a way of sensing the deeper dimensions of reality. For example, in Chinese medicine, the acupuncture points that the ancients were able to imagine and see, or in Ayurvedic medicine, the chakras. Whoops, sorry. Okay, I'm going to start over again here. Okay, so I'll just, I guess I can't pause it. Oh, yes, I can pause it. Okay, here we go. I stopped him instead of pausing it. So the ancients, yes, they saw our physical body, but they were also able to sense or experience the meridians and all of the nadis, all of the what we know today to be what we call the acupuncture points. This map of acupuncture points is as valid today, thousands of years later, and we're talking as much as 5,000 years ago, as they were 5,000 years ago. And we can treat diseases, complications in human beings with these same points that were mapped out so long ago. Now we see that this mapping out and also the understanding that the ancients had was that the energy flowing through our body is not just held in our body, that energy is actually a cosmic flow. They realized that we are really a dance of energy and energy forms, waveforms that come together at certain intersection points. And what we really look like is this. And well, the screen doesn't show it, or this image doesn't show it, but really these waveforms, okay, these vibrating waveforms that come together to form us, reach out as into the far reaches of space, reach out everywhere in nature. What is forming us is really the interconnection of all of these movements, cosmic movements and movements in nature that come together to form our organism. So this oneness, this sense really of being formed or created by a cosmic dance. I always say that we're a cosmic conspiracy. And that our organizing principle then works as a whole to then create what we call the human body and the functioning of the human body. Now, this idea of waveforms or electromagnetic, so this level of electromagnetic reality is now a fact. It used to be that we thought it was just in our imagination, I think, or it's because we couldn't measure it. But there's an interesting group in California, HeartMath, and for over the last 20 years, they've been using biofeedback methods to treat people with heart problems. So basically, these people are sat in front of a monitor, and they're fed back how their heart is, through images, how their heart is performing. And through techniques of meditation and calming the mind and focusing on the effects that their calming thoughts and activities have on the image of their heart, they're able to bring a lot of healing to even serious heart disease. So they're one of the most successful research groups in addressing heart disease, and many of their techniques have become now mainstream medicine and used by the Mayo Clinic and many of the major heart centers around the world. But these 20 years of research have led them to be able to map the electromagnetic field around the heart. So as you can see, that electromagnetic field being, if you like, which is part and parcel of the organization of our organism, goes way beyond our skin. That we are not just skin encapsulated. This is how we perceive ourselves, but it really isn't the reality. We are as intimately connected with the universe and with nature as all of the cosmos is. We are, in many ways, the entire universe flowing through one point. We are a microcosm within the macrocosm. Okay, so we are the cosmos. This is perhaps a big jump for some people to fathom, and it can be. It's quite a lot to fathom. But the research and the studies are there. And like I said, it was Jan Christian Smuts, after reading about relativity and evolution, that came to that understanding. So whatever we consider our personality or the pattern that is our organizing principle that keeps us alive, is really a picture of the cosmos at the moment of our birth. We see our perception, our point of view is through that window it's positions of the stars, the state of the universe at that moment. And it's interesting, again, that the ancients had such a close relationship to that. The ancient Greeks, for example, used to map out the position of the stars and the universe at the moment of your birth and paint that on the ceiling of your bedroom so that you could see your point of view at the time of your birth and recognize what is really the essence of your personality or your pattern. A pattern, of course, that even though it was a picture then, is not a static one. It's a dynamic one that moves with the cosmos. So we have this point of view through which we see, but it is not, it's not stagnant. It is as dynamic as the universe is dynamic. If we can get into touch with the fact that the whole universe or the cosmos is inside us and that it moves through us, then we have a very different perspective on life and a very different relationship to nature and the cosmos. In many ways, it brings back that sense of wonder, a greater sense of wonder than we have when we imagine ourselves to be little monads, objects that are somehow separate from everything in space. So being that microcosmic reflection of the macrocosm is our true nature. And again, going back to the ancients, they understood this to a great extent and were able to use this understanding to guide themselves in their daily lives. This is the basis of the book called the I Ching, or Book of Changes, that was written over 5,000 years ago. In this book, which the Chinese used to run their dynasties, they used actually to align themselves with the movement of the cosmos, with the movement of the Tao. And what's perhaps fascinating and very few people realize is that this Book of Changes, which is 5,000 years old, is also the basis of a new mathematics that was conceived in 1600 by a fellow called Leibniz, a great mathematician, who, after reading or finding this 5 millennia-year-old book called the I Ching, developed a binary system of mathematics, binary arithmetic, which uses only the characters 1 and 0, only the numbers 1 and 0, to represent everything. Because this is the basis of the Book of Changes, of course, is that there's yin and yang. There's the space and matter, the energy and light, the void and what is seen as the material world. So the 0 and 1 are the combination of everything that exists. Anyway, so Leibniz created this new system of mathematics, which, of course, without which we would not have our computers. Our computers are based on binary mathematics. And that's everything from your computer processing to our screens, to our television screens. Everything electronic is based on this binary mathematics of off and on, of 0 and 1. And of course, we can represent everything in the universe, as we know, with zeros and ones, because we do. We see pictures of anything that exists, including ourselves, on our screens. But what are we looking at really? We're looking at zeros and ones. We're looking at the yin and yang of life. We're looking at each spot being either a 0 or a 1, and therefore creating the image. And all functioning, all the intelligence that we see coming out of our computers and their processing abilities comes from this system of mathematics. So the ancients were in touch with something very basic, understanding the yin and yang, understanding that reality is made of primarily of binary constituents, of yin and yang, of 2 dimensions, on and off, of the visible and invisible, of ones and zeros. And that it's not only the base of computer processing, but that everything in the world can be coded by a series of zeros and ones. So the same text, and what makes it interesting for us in the health field, is the same text, the I Ching, is also responsible for what's called the 5-element theory of Chinese medicine, which is the basis of acupuncture and the basis of all Chinese medicine. These are the principles of health and disease that have guided Chinese medicine for over 5,000 years. And what's fascinating about it, again, is that the understanding that is the foundation of Chinese medicine is an understanding based on the dynamic movement of the cosmos and sees the human being in that dynamic movement. So in the system of the 5 elements is this constant dynamic movement of energy as it flows through from the cosmos through the living organism. So what we So in Chinese medicine, for example, these different systems, these different elements of fire, earth, metal, water, and wood are related to certain functions in the body, certain organs in the body, and also certain emotions. And that during the day, during any 24-hour period, there are times when one of these elements is predominant over the others, and that is that time of day. So we go through each one of these elements every day, but we also go through these elements in the change of seasons. So these elements are also associated with the spring, fall, winter, summer. And again, different elements are predominant in different seasons. So we have this dynamic picture of the human being, not a static one where we're looking at the human being in relationship to the seasons, in relationship to the cosmos, in relationship to the movement of the earth through space, the 24-hour clock. So it's the human being in relationship to movement, and as a focal point of that movement, of that cosmic movement. Each of us being a different focal point, but each of us representing then the universe just from a different point of view, from a different focal point, but still being the movement of the universe, still being the cosmic movement. So the basis of traditional medicine has always been this dynamic understanding of the human being as a part and a representative of the greater whole of reality. And the maps that they were able to create are as valid today, 5,000 years later, as they were 5,000 years ago. So that tells us that they were onto something true and timeless. So they understood that we are eddies. You know, if you've ever gone to the river's edge, you'll see that the river forms eddies or currents, little vortices. And what is that vortex really? Well, is that vortex separate or made of something different than the river itself? No, it isn't. It's just a movement within the river. And yet it'll hold its depth and space and size, you know, for whatever time that it exists in a more or less similar way, just as we do. So, you know, for the very short time, universally speaking, that we are here, each of us on the planet, we have a specific shape, size, and point of view. But what are we made of? We are made of the flow of life, of the Tao, of all of the constituents that everything else is made of in the universe. So we are a dancing waveform. We are an eddy in the current. We are a dynamic movement of interconnected waves. We are waves of generational waves, planetary waves, evolutionary waves, with this complex dance of waveforms that brings in the universal pattern. So what's interesting about the nature of the universe, as explained in the I Ching, as explained in the Tao, as explained by the Chinese, the ancients of almost every civilization, is that the material and immaterial dimensions aren't separate dimensions. That material and immaterial are the yin and yang of reality. That there is the material dimension cannot exist without the immaterial, and that the immaterial expresses itself through the material. These are two dimensions of one reality, and one cannot exist without the other. So to say that the world is completely immaterial or spiritual, or to say that the world is only material, is denying the other part of reality and the other necessary part of reality for reality to be what it is. So the material dimension, the immaterial, are the one and the zero of our I Ching, the real basis of reality. So this whole battle of, you know, is the world material or is it immaterial? Is the basis of reality spiritual or material? Is stuff just stuff? It really is only makes sense from a very narrow perspective. As soon as we step back and we look at the true nature of reality, we realize that the material and immaterial are two dimensions of reality, two dimensions that are intimately connected. Sort of like you would say color and shape. Okay, you can't have color without shape. You see color because there is something that is reflecting that color. So with every color is a shape, and with every shape is a color. These are just two dimensions of the object, just as the material and immaterial are two dimensions of ourselves. So when we consider a living organism, particularly, we have to take into consideration not only the material dimensions, but the immaterial dimensions. I was saying earlier that our food and as well contains material and immaterial dimensions. And exploring those immaterial dimensions is what we like to do at Niche, because of course, our medicine of choice is homeopathy, and homeopathy bridges the material and immaterial. Homeopathy, as we know, does not contain anything material as such. It is a signal. It's an immaterial signal being carried by the molecules of the water. And so what we have there is something that, yes, we can see physically in the form of the remedy or the pills, but what its effect is and what really is the active ingredient, if we can say, is immaterial, is in the dimension of immateriality. It is an electromagnetic signal, even finer than electromagnetic. It's a waveform that is the signature of whatever element in nature, of whatever plant, mineral, or animal in nature has been dynamized, okay, and created that signal. And then that signal is what is used to interact with our own signal, with our own dance of waves that come together to form who we are as an organism. So, Holism, which really explains, if you like, the interaction between the material and immaterial dimensions, and sees the whole of reality as being the dance of that, and explains that whole of reality through the theory of evolution and the theory of relativity and quantum physics. We then can base our understanding on something that is well formulated, and something solid that we know is true through observation and experimentation. So that's the importance of holism for us, and why we look at it. Of course, I just gave you a very quick run through, and the course itself will explain much more. So for those of you who have access to Unit 1, taking a read through now of Unit 1 and doing some of the holistic integration exercises, as well as a little film that you can see, will help ground some of this. But nonetheless, we've looked at some of those ideas of what is material. We call people materialistic. We live in a materialistic society where we mistake, in a way, our material world for being stuff, as if it's solid stuff. And we think of our bodies as being the solid stuff, when in fact we are a dance of energy. We are vibrational. And each of us has a signature vibration. Every rock, every plant, whatever makes something a whole has its own unique signature, which creates that wholeness. Your organizational principle that keeps your organism functioning so precisely and so synchronistically, the 30 or 40 trillion reactions per second are in perfect synchronicity and a perfectly choreographed, because of that signal that is your unique signal, that is your life force that orchestrates all of that together. And it is that signal, of course, that is relates to the signal in the homeopathic remedy, and therefore the organism is treated as a whole in the resonance with one of the 5,000 signals that we give it through homeopathy. So the all materialistic idea, and Jan Christian Smuts talks about that in his book, and I talk about that a little bit in chapter 1, materialistic idea of the material world or reality being stuff isn't reflective at all of true reality. That the material world is really a vibrational world, an ever-moving, dynamic world of energy. And that holism is really the deep understanding that is replacing mechanism. And it's really interesting to see what's happening in the leading edge research right now, where, you know how we've always talked about finding the mechanisms of things. Well, now we're going to be talking about the holisms of things. The mechanisms of things is that cause and effect thing. Oh, you do this and you get that. But mechanism, and even the idea comes from the word mechanical, and mechanisms and understanding things mechanically works wonderfully for machines, and works wonderfully as long as we're looking at the mechanical aspects of our machine. But if we're looking at the vital aspects, if we're looking at a living organism vitally, dynamically, as an evolving living organism, then looking at mechanisms is much too limited. It's much too mechanical. We need to look at holisms. We need to look at the organism as a whole, operating within a greater whole. And that is what holism is about, is really the evolution of understanding from mechanism to holism, to this is the understanding, of course, that the Chinese understood 5,000 years ago, and their ability to support the vital force through acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And which what we do today with homeopathy through that same understanding, that holistic understanding. Okay, so that's my little brief intro, and I'm sure you have lots of questions. So I'm going to open up the floor here to everyone, so that you can just raise your hand if you have a question, so that we don't have too much background noise.